One night in the city of Shibuya, we are introduced to a little boy with bushy hair named Ren, who happens to be running from the cops. Apparently, Ren has lost his mother to an accident, and since his father is a jobless deadbeat, foster carers arrive at his house the following morning to take him into their custody. However, Ren doesn't like the idea of going to a foster home, so runs away while deciding to live alone from then onwards. As a result of this decision, he has now started to live his life on the streets and in abandoned alleyways because he has nowhere else to go. One night, while he is sleeping near a bike rack, his pet named Chico comes out of his hair to wake him up. After this, two hooded guys walk past Ren as he sits on the floor. But before they both leave, one of them notices Ren and asks him what he is doing here, but Ren immediately gets aggressive and tells him to shut up. This guy in the hood is annoyed by Ren's behavior, so he drags him up to see his face. And while this happens, Ren looks him in the face and is surprised to see a red-eyed bear beast. The beast decides to let him go after that, but before he leaves he asks Ren whether he wants to come along with him, to which Ren declines. This beast that Ren has come across happens to be a legendary Kumatatsu. A couple of hours later, Ren is walking around the city until he runs into some police who want to take him back home because they believe it's way too late at night for a kid to be moving around. As expected, Ren starts to run away from them, but as he runs, he spots an unusual alley that he believes can be used to get away from the police, so he walks into this strange alley with some slight hesitation. He reaches the other side of the alley and arrives at the city of Jutengai, which is seen to be filled with several beasts. Naturally, Ren gets scared by this, so he starts to run around in an attempt to get back to his world. While he's there, he runs into Kumatatsu, who is very happy to see him. He first tries to make Ren his disciple, but some of the other beasts hear his idea and let him know that it's an abomination to take a human child as a pupil. Kumatatsu doesn't care about the culture, so he still has the ambition of making Ren his disciple. Ren follows Kumatatsu back to his house and starts to put up a very annoying attitude while letting Kumatatsu know that he hasn't agreed to be his disciple. During their dispute, Kumatatsu decides to give Ren the name Kyuda because he refuses to tell him his name. The next morning, Kyuda is yet again in a bad mood, so he decides to run away from the house and into the market square, all for which Kumatatsu chases after him. It doesn't take long before Kyuda is recognized to be the only human living among them, but amidst their confusion, Kumatatsu goes on to explain that he has decided to make a human his disciple. The popular Yuzin hears about this and starts to yell at Kumatatsu, while reminding him that it's forbidden to have a human in the city of the beast. Kumatatsu quickly gets annoyed by Yuzin's tone, and so he issues a duel to him, which is going to get watched by the market square to determine once and for all who is stronger. During this battle, Kyuda notices that no one is supporting Kumatatsu, which makes him realize that their backstories of being alone may be quite similar. Although Kumatatsu is a fair match against him, he is currently getting badly beaten up by Yuzin, and just then, the Grandmaster suddenly appears and stops the fight. Yuzin informs him that Kumatatsu brought a human, but the Grandmaster doesn't seem to care, so he officially allows him to keep Kyuda as a disciple. Later that evening, after the fight, Kyuda comes back to Kumatatsu's house and tells him that he now wants to become his disciple because he was impressed to find out just how strong he is. Kumatatsu is delighted to hear this, so he begins his training with Kyuda almost immediately. So from that day onwards, Kumatatsu engaged Kyuda in some simple training exercises, but he failed to learn any of them, causing Kumatatsu to call him a slow learner. During this escapade, Kumatatsu's monk friend known as Haya informs Kyuda that Kumatatsu is a horrible teacher because he learned how to fight all on his own and was also alone most of his childhood. Kyuda hears this and realizes that they both are very similar in nature. The next morning, Kyuda realizes that the best way for him to learn would be to imitate Kumatatsu's movements until he's just as strong as him. So with this in mind, Kyuda has started to imitate Kumatatsu's slightest movements with the belief that it would improve his footwork and speed. After a couple of days of doing this, Kyuda goes over to show Kumatatsu his improved footwork and speed, which shocks him and his two friends Haya and Tada because they never knew that he had it in him. Because Kyuda has shown some potential, he and Kumatatsu spend the next 8 years training intensely. Yuzin acknowledges how far Kyuda has come, so he commends him by agreeing that he indeed has potential. After these 8 years go by, Kyuda is now a 17-year-old whose body has matured physically. However, his actions still prove to be childish because he is seen having one pointless argument with Kumatatsu while having breakfast. Amidst this argument, Kyuda runs away and into the town square, where he enters an unfamiliar abandoned alley and realizes that he has found his way back to the human world. On re-entering the human world, he observes that things have changed a lot due to technological advancements over the years. After this, he heads over to the library where he realizes that he can't read out of a book because he has only completed primary school. While he's there, he meets a girl named Kei-Day who he asks to read out some words from the book for him, all of which she does. Now, as he's about to leave the library, he sees the same Kei-Day girl getting bullied by some other teenagers, so he steps in and saves her. After this, Kyuda and Kei-Day start to talk for a bit, and during their conversation, he informs her that he can't read out of the book because he hasn't had a secondary education. Kei-Day is a girl with a kind heart, so she promises to teach him how to read until he's a master at it. Over the next few weeks, Kyuda starts to spend more time reading than training with Kumatatsu. Eventually, Kei-Day brings up the idea of Kyuda going to a university, but he doesn't really think it will be possible, especially because he has no secondary education. But even with that, Kei-Day is still determined to help him out, so she takes him to the education board to see what can be done. After getting there, they meet a male worker, who tells Kyuda that it won't be possible for him to get into a university with any credible exam results or education. But right before they lose hope, a lady draws their attention to inform them that there is a scholarship exam known as the Kounan test that Kyuda can take to gain admission into a university. However, it would solely depend on his grades. Kei-Day hears this and starts to get excited, so she promises to teach him everything that he needs to know. A certificate of residence is a peak requirement for the test, so they both head over to the records building to see whether he can get one approved. While being there, Kyuda realizes that his family records are still being kept in the database, so he manages to find out his biological father's address from these records, but is unsure of whether he should visit him because he doesn't know how he will react. Later that evening, he coincidentally runs into his father at the market, who surprisingly rushes to embrace him and then apologizes for letting him be alone all this time. He claims to have been looking for Kyuda ever since his mother died, but never found him, which makes sense because it was around that time he entered into the Beast World. Since Kyuda's father has proposed for them to live together as a normal family, he figures that he can now start to lead a normal life by going to university and studying like a normal person. Some hours later, he goes back to the Beast World to inform Kumatatsu that he has found his father, and also that he wants to go to a regular human school. Kumatatsu doesn't support this idea of his because all he wants him to do is train to get stronger. Now that Kyuda has passed the message, he doesn't run away this time but rather just walks away. Kumatatsu tries to stop him, but Kyuda is easily able to flip him onto the ground, indicating that he has grown to become really strong. Shortly after, he goes back to the human world to meet up with his father. As they go home, Kyuda gets into an argument with his father, causing him to run away yet again. Then as he roams the streets of Shibuya, he notices a reflection of his younger self being consumed by darkness with a hole in his chest. He turns around to another reflective surface to see that his current self is still being consumed with darkness and has the same hole in his chest. Kyuda doesn't know what this means, so he starts to freak out, after which he goes over to Kei-Day's house, with the hope that she can calm him down. Rather than being calm, Kyuda starts to get aggressive towards her while wondering whether he's a beast or a human. However, Kei-Day understands that he's just a bit confused about life, so she gives him a warm hug which calms him down almost instantly. After this, she gives him a bracelet, which he's meant to use as a charm to calm himself down whenever he gets in that aggressive mood again. The next day in the Beast World, Kyuda goes over to Yuzen's house to meet up with his son named Jirumaru. Ever since Kyuda came to the Beast World, they both have formed a strong bond and have become very good friends even though they're not of the same race. While he's there, Jirumaru informs Kyuda of the battle for the Grandmaster's successor, which will be taking place very soon. A few minutes later, Kyuda is about to leave the house, but Jirumaru's brother named Inai offers to walk him to the entrance. So as they both walk to the entrance, Inai starts to attack Kyuda all of a sudden, causing him to fall to the floor, but just as Inai is about to leave, Kyuda notices that he is also consumed by darkness and has the same kind of hole in his chest. A couple of days later, all the beasts were seated in the arena for the battle between Yuzen and Kumatatsu. This battle is taking place because the Grandmaster has finally decided on what kind of god he wants to be reincarnated to. However, he decides to announce his decision after the battle is concluded. Shortly after, both warriors step into the ring. Although Kumatatsu is a bit upset about Kyuda not coming to support him, he decides to not let it get the best of him. However, Kyuda has secretly attended this event and hides among the crowd. Moments later, the battle begins and Kumatatsu immediately assumes his bull position and starts to attack Yuzen head-on, but he is easily able to counter each attack. Once Yuzen has successfully landed a blow on Kumatatsu, he goes into his bull form and collides with him several times, causing him to fall to the ground. As he lies on the ground, the referee begins his count to 10, which is the mechanism that will determine the winner. Now on the 8th count, Kyuta steps up and calls out for Kumatatsu while cheering him on and also telling him not to lose. These words from Kyuta instantly motivate him, causing him to get up before the count hits 10. Kumatatsu then gets up and, thanks to Kyuta, dominates the rest of the fight and is eventually crowned the winner, meaning that he is now the new Grandmaster. Kumatatsu then goes over to give Kyuta a handshake, but as his back is turned, Nia comes out of nowhere and uses his telekinesis to stab Kumatatsu with his sword. As Kumatatsu falls to the ground, the hole in Kyuta starts to open, causing him to develop telekinesis abilities of his own, which he uses to send a sword straight in Nia's direction. But right before the sword connects, Chiko snaps Kyuta out of it, causing the sword to fall right before it hits him. After this, Nia has now been fully consumed by the darkness, so he disappears while telling Kyuta that he will never forgive him. A few hours later, Kyuta wakes up to see Kumatatsu in terrible shape with bandages all over his body. He acknowledges that this is all Nia's fault, but rather than wanting pure revenge, he vows to dispel the darkness out of Nia entirely. Apparently, Nia was an abandoned human child that Iuzan found in an alleyway. Even though taking humans was against the rules, Iuzan took it upon himself to raise him all by himself. Meanwhile, in the human world, Kyuta meets up with Kaede to thank her for all she has done for him while he bids her farewell because he is uncertain of the outcome of his battle with Nia. However, Kaede doesn't want to say goodbye to him, so she decides to be with him no matter what danger is to come. Then all of a sudden, Nia appears out of nowhere and starts to attack Kyuta in the presence of all the other humans. Although Kyuta can hold his ground against him, he is still unable to defeat him, so he grabs Kaede by the hand and runs away with her. Meanwhile, in the Beast world, Kumatetsu has been informed of Kyuta's battle with Nia, so he gets out of bed and is determined to go and help him despite his medical condition. Since he is now the Grandmaster, he wishes to reincarnate as a god so that he can help Kyuta win this battle, all of which the former Grandmaster thinks about for a bit but later agrees to. Now while Kyuta is battling Nia yet again along the docks, Kumatatsu has officially been reincarnated to take the form of a flaming sword. Kyuta then absorbs Kumatetsu, granting the right amount of power to defeat Nia with a single slash of his sword. Now that the darkness has been dispelled, Nia wakes up and has returned to his normal self, but doesn't seem to have memories of all that happened. After this victory, Kyuta was celebrated by the entire Beast City. After that, Kyuta left the Beast City. He has now moved in with his father and is preparing for his university education while he has Kumatatsu in his heart to guide him.